You're at the Coaching Inn, 3D Coaching's virtual pub, where we enjoy conversations with people who are engaged in the world of coaching.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Coaching Inn. I'm your host, Claire Pedrick, and this year, 3D Coaching, which is the company I founded, is 30. And I know that because my baby is 30, and I started it 3 months after she was born. So I've been in conversations with a number of coaches who are mums in the last few months, and I just thought it'd be really lovely to celebrate the birthday of 3D Coaching and the birthday of my younger child, to have a conversation with some mums who are coaches now. I was thinking this morning of what was it like, and she was born when there were no mobile phones and no internet. Now, how extraordinary is that? So now, knowing what I know now, I'm not quite sure how I started a business with neither a mobile phone nor internet. But I can remember having coaching calls on a wired-in telephone in the spare bedroom. So there you are. What a thing. So that's not how it is now. And so let's introduce our lovely guests at today's open table. So Mayuri Hargest, hello.
Hi, good morning. I'm Mayuri. I now live in Birmingham after a couple of years. Prior to that was in Wales. I'm a mum to two little ones. And actually when I first came to coaching, I wasn't even in a position where I thought I might be able to become a mum. So it's been quite a change to land in it. When I first came to coaching, actually, that's where I met Katie, who's also on the call. We did our training together, and I was in the midst of a career transition. Someone had said to me, maybe it's something you should explore, and I was at the point of leaving my old role. So I decided to do some training. Since then, set up the online desk coaching, took 2 maternity leaves, raised young, beautiful kids, one who's about to start school in September, and now coaching looks more like organisational coaching in work and a little bit on the side in terms of the self-employed role.
Nice. And your lovely children and you have come on a coach's walk.
Yes, we have. Yeah, very recently.
It was very lovely to meet them. Alice Phillip, hello.
Hi. Great to be here. My journey started into coaching, I think, before I knew the word coaching, when I was a teenager, and I was, like most teenagers, wondering what to do. And I said to someone who I thought should know, is there a job that's a bit like a kind of professional sounding board? And they said, oh, no, there's no job like that. And I thought, okay. So fast forward about 10 years, the charity where I was working put on an introduction to coaching course, led by the wonderful Claire, and the rest is history. I did it and I thought, yeah, this was the thing I thought might exist, and I love it. But I kept going with my other career in communications, mostly editing, and I actually do still have 2 jobs. So I work as the managing editor of a magazine called Forced Migration Review, which is based at the University of Oxford. So it's about refugee, asylum and statelessness issues, and goes to 170 countries and is great fun. But on the other side, I still am pursuing coaching professionally. I've been doing that for the last 5 years as well, and I love having 2 jobs. It's brilliant. Coaching mostly younger professionals, probably between 20 and 45. I think it's such an interesting time in life, and that's me.
Brilliant. And I'm so pleased that you became a coach. I learned so much from you on that course. I can't remember what it was now, but there was something that I learned from you that I use now, and what a beautiful thing that is. Katie Poole, hello. So you know Mayuri, so tell us about you.
Oh, there we go. Thank you all. Thank you so much for having me as well. It's lovely to be here with everybody. Yes, I'm Katie. I started coaching in 2019 and came from a long background in education. So I've been a teacher and a middle leader in education. And yeah, it's interesting. My coaching journey has been very, through the pandemic. We started in 2019, and then within a few months we're in lockdown. At the time, my daughter was about 3, so I've got one daughter. She's 9. She's almost 10 now. And yeah, so in terms of my work, I've mostly coach people who are mission led, who are very much, pour their heart and their soul into working with other people. So that might be head teachers, a lot of educators and senior leaders in education, but also business owners, very creative, really focused on creatives as well. So I also host the Sunday Morning Journaling Club, which is a free monthly journaling session. So I really love to curate spaces for people to think in a new way through the medium of journaling. And so now I'm working on blending those two things, the journaling and the coaching together, which has been fantastic. And I am also back in the classroom a little bit as well in the last year. I've gone in a little bit back in. So yeah, I've also got those various roles to juggle. But yeah, also loving it. So yeah.
Brilliant. Well, welcome, Katie. And
Thank
have you heard of Storia from Liz Uviebinene?
Oh no, I haven't.
She has a journaling app. She was on the podcast a few months ago, and she was introduced to us by Maria Fernandez, who's not here today because her baby is due any minute.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's amazing. I'll look that up. Thank you.
Yeah, do. Laura, hello.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me here. And Katie, your journaling sessions sound amazing. That Sunday morning for journaling session sounds right up my street. So I'm Laura. I'm Laura Duggal. I'm a parental return to work coach. Quite recently, before that, I was maternity return coach. And like you, Claire, I know how old my business is because I started it when my daughter was born. So it's around 10. It was a bit hazy in the beginning, so it's around 10 years old. But before that, I worked in HR, and part of my role was, at the time I would have said managing people's return to work, and now I would like to think of it as welcoming people back to work. But that was part of my HR role, but I hadn't actually had children. So I think I was it was quite surface level, nothing wrong with it as such, but quite, like what flexible working would you like, that sort of thing. And then when I had my daughter, for me, I felt like it was quite a profound experience. And I just realised this whole sort of doorway to loads of emotions that I didn't even know existed before, the whole responsibility piece. Just my life just changed in more ways than I can even list, for the better. And that's what led me to go through my own career change and then move into what I'm doing now.
Wow. How interesting to be on one side and then on the other. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, welcome, Laura. Beth O'Neill, hello. Welcome to the Coaching Inn.
Hello. Thank you for having me this morning. So my name's Beth. I'm a leadership coach and trainer, ICF qualified. I've been coaching since around 2017, and I was working as an executive assistant at the time, and we hired within this charity a leadership coach. And I fell in love with everything that she was saying in the boardroom. I was just gravitating towards her. And she became my mentor and gave me a place on a coaching program. So I did my initial certification at that time. And I continued working in different events management, project management, EA roles whilst doing one-to-one coaching, and then joined this amazing coaching company called Resurgo, where I fell in love with training leaders in how to coach. So I was there for about 4 years as part of the consulting team, designing and delivering coaching programs. But I've always been a bit of an entrepreneur, big dreamer, big visions. And about 2 years ago, is it 3 years ago? Losing track of time. My son was about 6 months old. I decided to launch my own business. So I founded Beth O'Neill Coaching, and we train leaders in how to coach. So we run something called the Coaching Culture Program, but we have a big focus on women in leadership. So I run a women in leadership program, helping female leaders at any stage of their leadership. They could be brand new managers or CEOs, develop these 10 steps to developing their executive coaching presence and being strong, impactful leaders. And so, that's my big passion, is supporting female leaders.
And are you still working with Resurgo?
I'm still connected with them, but no longer working with them.
I have my eye on somebody from Resurgo as a future guest.
Ooh, there's some amazing coaches in that organisation. Brilliant. It was such a good training ground for where I am right now. I owe a lot of my coaching, my qualification, everything to them. They're brilliant.
Great. Well, welcome, Beth. And Rachel Erasmus, hello.
Hi, so I was a midwife in London for about 15 years, and I became a coactive coach and also got trained with Claire when I was in London. And that was in about 2013, 2014, something like that. And then in 2018, I had my daughter. So she's now 7. And the last few years, I've been working to build up my business as well, which is coaching women throughout the whole of their pregnancy, leaving work, pregnancy, birth, postnatal, and then returning to work. So it's just been a really interesting journey from various different angles around kind of motherhood. So fantastic to get to be here with you guys and get to hear from you and share different insights.
Yeah, well, welcome. And I remember you and I had a very deep, meaningful coffee in Starbucks on Charing Cross Road.
Yes, we did. We did.
And it was hot, I remember. Funny what you remember, isn't it? I don't remember what we talked about, but I remember it was deep and meaningful and hot. And I can even tell you strange memories, but which table we were sitting at, but that's a completely other... That's the topic for a totally different podcast. Anyway, welcome everyone. How lovely to have you here, and how interesting to notice that for all of you, there's something about combining your coaching and your mothering. And some of you are also working in that mother or female space, and some of you are working in very different spaces. So as people were introducing themselves, I wonder what you noticed, and I wonder what you want to ask each other. Mayuri, what did you notice?
I think for me, actually, Rachel, I probably have a question for you in terms of the midwifery and how that relates to coaching, like in terms of the skills you had to use in one to the other.
Yeah, interestingly, Claire and I had a good chat about that a little while ago. I think one of the really significant things that stood out to me is about presence, and how that gets impacted. So what I noticed as a midwife is if I was feeling quite tense and quite anxious in myself, it did have an impact in the room with somebody in labour, and also the kind of the influence that I would bring to that. Whereas, and the same thing I notice now with coaching, if I'm quite rattled or if I've got some other stuff running and I'm not managing myself well, that really impacts on how the coaching evolves. So that's one of probably many, many things, but that's something that stands out to me.
And I'll pop in the show notes a link to the episode where Rachel talked in much more depth about this. But it's fascinating, isn't it? Because I think that actually when you're right, when we're rattled, it does really impact the capacity of the other person to be courageous, because we're not being as courageous as we could be. Alice, you look like you were emerging a thought, sir.
Yeah, I was thinking also actually about the beauty of accompaniment. So with midwifery, it's such an important part of it, isn't it, to be present throughout. And I had quite a negative experience of having 5 different midwives before birth, and 4 different midwives during the labour. And actually the lack of accompaniment really made a big difference to me, because I couldn't build trust. And I think that actually what we do as coaches is also so much, isn't it, about accompaniment through a period of time. And yeah, the parallel with motherhood of your accompanying your child through its life, but sort of seeing it through different stages and allowing for change in the other person, being surprised, being supportive. Yeah, I guess my question kind of to the group is, what have you learned from motherhood that you've been applying in your coaching?
Nice question. Who wants to answer that first?
Yeah, lovely question. also, I was just off the tail of what Rachel was saying, just brought back memories of when I had my daughter, and how important that role of a midwife is, that you just don't realise until you go through having a baby. And I thought my midwife had magic powers, honestly, because she was just the only person who was there. And when you just described that then about presence, and there was something in the way that my midwife held my hand and she just looked into my eyes and she really grounded me. And I wasn't a coach at the time and I hadn't begun this journey. And honestly, I remember her name was Dawn. I've never met her, seen her since, but I remember her name because it was so special. Yeah, I'm just absolutely right. It's such an important role, isn't it? And to be able to give that, if it is a positive experience to somebody, it's amazing, isn't it? I will always remember my midwife. She was incredible. Sorry, but I went off track because
Motherhood.
I was thinking about that. Yeah. And then what has motherhood taught about coaching? And it's interesting because I think as I was sort of going on my walk this morning, I was thinking about what has coaching taught me about motherhood. But then it occurred to me as well that, there's a lot of, it's gone both ways, hasn't it? And I think there are so many, I don't even know if I can answer that question from one to the other. And particularly because for me, I've learnt to be a coach and still learning to be a coach and still learning to be a mother at the same time. But there are things that I think I do now that I don't think I could have done before. I didn't know how to do it. And part of what you're saying, Rachel, I think is for me, part of parenting that I don't know if I would do if I was not a coach, is about the holding space bit and like not rushing to fix something, and really, really listening. So like if my daughter's come home and had a bad day or a good day and just wants to talk about something, I do think that without coaching skills, I probably would rush in and either join her in her it's exciting what, or, oh, that's terrible, what can we do? Like that sort of, and I think I hope she would say that I'm quite good at just listening and just seeing like, where is she going with this before I jump to any conclusions. So yeah, that was my initial thought.
Yeah, great. I love that thought, Laura. And we've touched a little bit on presence so far. And I think that's been it's something I've always been passionate about in terms of the presence we carry. And I train women in executive presence. I'm always mindful of presence, but I think it's been enhanced even more because of being present with my son. It's kind of like when he walks in the room, even if I'm working, whatever I'm doing, it's like put it down, focus on him, offer him my full whole self to listen to him or try to understand whatever he's going through. So I think enhancing presence with clients, that's increased. And empathy, trying to slow down, empathize, try to understand, obviously without saving. Even though I'm a coach, my lead into coaching was more around the goal setting and achiever, and that was my drive to coaching. So I've had to really work on the slowing down, the empathy piece. And I love exploring that tool because it's a challenge and there's so much beauty that comes from it. And I feel like having children has really helped enhance the presence piece.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we'll go to Katie and then Maya in a minute. But what's interesting is that sometimes the parenting thing can show up in different ways in the coaching. So I often say in supervision to coaches who are more my age than your age, how old are your children? If there's a dynamic coming up between them and the person they're coaching, because actually it kind of comes around again. And if we're coaching somebody who is the same age as our children, that can be an interesting thing, particularly if they're the same gender. Katie, what were you going to say?
Yeah, it's interesting. So my daughter was, she just turned 4 actually when I trained as a coach, and she's now nearly 10. And as she has developed and changed, obviously my experience has grown as a coach. But it's interesting. I think the first thing when she was very young, when I started out, that really I felt the impact of the two interleaving was almost the unconditional positive regard. And I'd left teaching at that point, and I'd moved schools and I was considering leaving, but having a child totally taught me something about unconditional positive regard that then was, I think, had I trained as a coach before I'd become a parent, I don't know if that would have been as authentic, maybe, and I think that shifted. And as she's grown, just as Laura said there, really like that sense of, as my daughter's grown and start to, she's experiencing different dynamics at school and different relationships, and those then come home in a way that they didn't when she was little. That has really kind of enhanced my coaching skills, and also been influenced by them in a different way. The conversation, the listening, the holding space for her. So it's interesting how it shifted. And it's one of the things that stood out to me already massively from this conversation is a sense of solidarity. I don't feel there are many spaces for and there haven't been many spaces for me in my journey to be with coaches who are mums, and particularly who have got younger children. And so it's lovely just to be here and hear of other people's stories as well. Just that feels quite powerful from the get-go of this conversation. Just, okay, and maybe I already talked about this before, but I think it's often felt like us too. I don't know. So it's lovely to be in a space where that, you know, you can hear other people's development and the impact as well. So yeah, it's just it surprised me how powerful it feels to be here with people who've also got younger children. So
What a beautiful thing, Katie.
Okay. Yes, I think a couple of things have struck me about the conversation as we've just gone, because I would say my kids are still really little. They're still 2 and 4, right? So Aria's just developing language, and she's really fascinating in that. My husband and I had a conversation this morning in that she knows how to say the words, but she doesn't necessarily know what they mean. And I wonder sometimes whether there's a parallel in what we face in terms of coaching regards that someone comes to us and they know what they should be doing or know what it might look like if they've seen someone else do it, but they aren't able to embody it because they don't quite understand it for themselves. So that's something that's come up. And then the other thing that I've been thinking about is like when I first trained to coach, one of the most powerful tools in that was that we were taught in that was Time to Think, a book by Nancy Klein. And that's really helped me kind of shape my thinking around how I'm choosing to parent. I don't always get it right, because none of us do. But I think there's been a sense of what's it look like for me to hear my child. That's come out of that kind of thinking of what is their voice like, what's their personality like, what are they really trying to tell me here? And like, even when that's quite affronting, or okay, maybe I need to change something about myself here, because maybe I'm falling into patterns instead of being what they need from me right now.
Thank you. Rachel?
There's 2 things actually I want to share. One is through my pregnancy, I was at a couple of stages, was far more anxious than I ever anticipated that I would be in being pregnant. And the first was just before the first scan. And the other one was we planned to have a home birth. We did have a home birth, and I worked in a home birth team. So it was something very familiar to me, but I actually got quite anxious again about, would she survive, and were we making the right choice, and was I putting too much responsibility on myself, because my husband didn't know so much about the context, and that was my decision. And the journey of that was a really deep one of surrender, and the recognition was I'm not in control, and I'm not in control of her life, I'm not in control of what happens, but there is some intention, there is some trust that's needed, there's some letting go that's needed. And I went through that process, and actually when it came to the birth, it was a really great experience for me. But I've never had it put to me so hard in me to let go of control. And I think that's such an important thing I need to keep bringing back in the coaching space, that I'm not in control, and there is a need to surrender and trust the process and trust what's going on. And the other thing for me is in parenting is I've had to really, and I am learning self-compassion, because the emphasis that I've always leaned on is my heart, is my ability to connect, is holding space, is those sort of more emotional side of things and how I coach. And there are things that come up in me with my child that are not how I want to be. You know, I get angry. I can feel like a heat in me that I've never known in my being before. And there's times where I don't like some of the behaviours, and I don't like how I speak, and I'm just on this monotone and I'm like, stop the flow, it's not helping anybody. And it's like, well, surely I could apply these skills that I've learned as a coach in my home environment, and I'm just not. And then I'm coming out and I'm leading a group of women who've just had babies in coaching groups. And I've had coaching in it myself, just going, you know, this is the reality. It is hard holding these different roles and trying to be true to myself and failing at times and bringing myself. But the truth is, I have to be self-compassionate. And then it increases my capacity to be compassionate for those that I'm alongside, because I have to go there myself to be able to hold it for others. So these are my observations.
Thank you. Don't ask my children if they think I'm a good listener. Because we can't take it all across. Because I love what you were describing there about being a human grumpy being. Thank you. Because all of us are sometimes, aren't we? We can't be this perfect anything. We can't be the perfect coach. You know, mediocre coaching is really good. Mediocre parenting is also really good. And there's no need to aspire to something that we can't achieve. Because actually, yeah, we want the people we coach to also know that mediocre is great. Sometimes brilliant is fabulous, but nobody can be brilliant all the time. Alice.
I was going to say something else, but the conversation's moved on to an interesting space, so I'll just flow with it like a coach. It's making me think about the challenges. I guess we were talking about the positives of mothering and coaching at the same time. And I realised I hadn't introduced who my child was, how old they were. So my son is 2. He just turned 2 a couple of weeks ago. And so I think he's the youngest on the call. And I actually went back to coaching. I took 3 months off coaching, but a whole year off my other job. And I went back because I really missed it. I wanted to go back, but it was really challenging to try and work out with breastfeeding, you know, how that was going to work. I didn't have a very regular timetable with my child. And I'll maybe share my experience first, but I'm interested to hear how some of you cope with some of these practicalities, I guess, of motherhood and coaching. I devised this plan where I would say to a client, yes, I can coach you. So it was mostly people that I was already coaching. I can coach you, but I need you to give me a 2-hour window. And I will call you immediately after a feed, and I will know that I can give you a whole hour of my attention. And it worked, and it was wonderful. It let me coach, but it set the expectations in a way that I could fulfill with my clients. And I didn't take on too many, but it gave me confidence. And for the first time after the birth, I just felt a little bit of familiarity, like I was being myself in a different way, because becoming a mum, you know, it's still very recent to me, but it's such, as you described, Laura, such a huge experience that actually something familiar of using a skill that I knew was in me, was still there, was really comforting. And also just to be present with somebody else in somebody else's world was so releasing. For me, maybe part of what I love about being a coach is just being completely absorbed in somebody else's space, and not having to think about anything of my own. And so to just for an hour have nothing to do with the intensity of early parenting and just be present with this other person was actually really great. I couldn't do more than 1 a week, but you know, it was a really positive outcome, but a challenge to work through. So I just wondered from other people, what challenges do you think have come up with combining motherhood and coaching, and maybe some tips of like how you got through them, because I'm at the youngest end here, so I'm going to learn from all of you and apply these things over the coming years.
I think it's so important to acknowledge the challenges, and they will all be different at different stages for different people with their different contexts, of course. But I think one of the things I've struggled with the most, and I've had to really work on, is shift from a feeling of limitation to acceptance. Limitation in terms of time in which to develop and run a business, kind of bookended by the school run, which seems to, I feel like I drop her off and then I go and pick her up straight an hour later. Things like the pandemic had a massive impact, were a huge challenge in terms of when my daughter went back to school. She was hit by illness repeatedly every 2 weeks for about 2 years, which was a massive, like her attendance was really poor because she just got hit by all the different bugs and illnesses she'd missed out on while she was off school. But also in accessing CPD opportunities, even now I find it really tricky. Most CPD opportunities that I come across tend to be that late afternoon, early evening, which is for me the worst time where I need to be most present. So I'll say the worst time to access anything outside of my family, but it's the time for me to be present for my daughter. And so these limitations, I've struggled with what I've perceived as limitation for a long time. I've really had to self-coach, and through my own coaching and supervision, really try to address my perception of it, to become more accepting of the stage of life that I'm at. Try to practice real gratitude for the stage my child's at as well, that she won't be in the primary school forever. That will be a stage that is already, time passes so quickly. So trying to be present and grounded and focus on what I can do rather than what I can't has been something that I've turned to with more
Nice.
flexibility as I've practiced it. So yeah, definitely that question of what can I do is something I've come back to quite a lot.
What a great question. And I can remember increasing my hours as my kids went from nursery into primary school and then into secondary school. So my working days got longer. And I never have worked in the school holidays. And I still don't. Because it didn't seem to have made a difference to my business. So I still have 16 weeks off because it didn't seem to have a bad effect. So why would I want to work more? So it's really interesting that we can learn to do some stuff. And as you say, Katie, there's something about not making it a limitation. There's something about optimizing it. Mayuri.
Yeah, so I think similar to what Alice said, I was going to say something else and now the conversation's flowed. So what I've just come to is something I've been talking to myself recently about, is the idea of lack or abundance and which mindset I'm going to choose. So going from that idea of like thinking of the limitations and what's going to stop you versus or what is available. And so things like I kept saying to myself, I'm not able really in my circumstance right now. I work 4 days a week in an organisation. So in terms of, and then Friday, which is my day off, is what I call my day with my kids. So that idea of being present, being there. And so for a while I was like, well, there's no time for me to really give to this self-employed thing, this thing I absolutely love doing. And it felt like a massive sacrifice. And I think that's the thing that maybe I'm still in a bit of process with, this idea of sacrifice for all of these things that you love, that you've somehow got to find time and balance and joy around, because they are all joyous and yet they all require this push and pull. And then the other thing I'm thinking about is like them coming to that idea of acceptance of, okay, this is the season I am in, recognizing one, it's a season, and two, recognizing, well, what can I do right now? So, I volunteered to do a session in our team meeting at work where I could deliver some coaching skills to the rest of my team and get them to experience some of it. I choose to do my one-to-ones as coaching sessions. One, because that allows me to add the hours, and two, because it is better for them and it's better for me if I choose to do it that way.
Nice.
And then 3 is just, where are the opportunities? So I've taken some annual leave because my son's graduating from preschool this afternoon, and this happened to be this morning. So yeah, like, find where the opportunities are that work with your timing.
Thank you, Mayuri.
I was actually just going to say something really practical that was for me when I had a block of coaching sessions booked in after my daughter was born in London, and I'd done them prior to having her, and I was ready to do them after she was born, and it got to it was about 5 months, I think, after she was born they were due to happen, and it was a couple of months before it, and I just thought, I cannot see her leaving me for more than an hour or two at all. I cannot conceive of getting out of bed and her being okay and getting on a train and going into London. It was just impossible. And I think at that point, I just thought, I'm going to have to let go of this whole group booking that I've got. But there was that kind of, again, what is possible, Murray, like you were saying, what is possible? And luckily, obviously, there is the internet. So I kind of proposed them and said, look, is there any way of breaking it up over a much longer period of time instead of over like a week, doing it over a few months and having like chunks, a couple of hours a day over several months. And then I managed to get my parents to look after my daughter twice a week for 2 hours a time to do it. And I was expressing, and it was a really, really big piece of work to do to achieve, I think it was 20 hours or something of coaching that had been booked. But I think there was 2 things for me in that. One is how much work is required to do the thing that you want to do, like the logistics of making something happen that women experience with small children. I think the other was I felt incredibly proud of myself for coming up with something creative and the support that got enrolled and having that and finding that it was possible. But I think I also realised it was more than I had capacity for sustainably at that point. And so in my situation and the dynamic that we had, I had to acknowledge that, like you were saying, Murray, there was a sacrifice that I needed to make for a period of time. And so for it was about 3 years, I didn't coach, and I was fully entirely with my daughter, and we tried to send her to nursery and she wouldn't go. So she was home with me longer than I had intended, first of all, but it was the right time for her. And it was hard being able to lay that down because it was the thing that I loved the most and I knew I wanted. But also that thing you were speaking about a season, and that was that season. And over the last few years, there's been a fanning back of the dreams and passions and skills and the things that have been part of me, that they remain, like Alice, you were speaking, that it's still there. And there is immense satisfaction in being able to start emerging back into the world that I held that was mine to inhabit. And I feel like now I'm inhabiting it in a different way and maybe a fuller way because of the journey that I've had to do.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, I think I've forgotten what I was going to say because it's just it's so it's just lovely, isn't it? Being around, having this conversation and recognizing that there's everything everybody has said. I've just nodded along and gone, oh yeah, I recognize that. And it kind of makes me wish, if, like, looking back, that I had, I think when I started to build my business, I really had a sense of being alone in motherhood and being alone in building a business. And at the time that I was starting what I was doing, it didn't really exist. Like calling myself a maternity return coach wasn't even a thing. And just this sort of feeling of, like real aloneness of, I don't know, just really enjoying the solidarity today and really enjoying the conversation and recognizing that there are these experiences that run through all of us. So, yeah.
And I think for some of us, we have to pretend that we're not parents in part of our work because that's not a place that we take that bit. So it's not that we're pretending we're not parents, but it's just something we don't acknowledge that part of our identity. So this is a place to acknowledge. And also, I just want to say, this is a shout out to several coaches who wanted to be here today and are probably in labour. We stand with you. We stand with you. And by the time you listen to this episode, your baby will hopefully be sleeping a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, I'm really appreciating the insights and tips. It's taken me back to those first few years and, like I said, balancing childcare and breastfeeding and everything. So my son's 3 now. He's in nursery. He's been in nursery since he was about 1. And we kind of extended the times from like 2 to 3 to 5 days. And so what I practically try to do is when I'm working with my corporate clients is shortening the day. So it's like 9:30, 10 o'clock start, finishing at 4:30. So I just give myself that buffer time to travel to do the nursery pickup. And prioritization and time blocking. It's really hard to finish a gig and then go straight to pickup because you haven't had as much time to reflect, to make notes. So it's like the next morning, blocking that hour, review what happened. So I have to really manage my time so much better. And my business coach about a year ago was like, the best thing you can do is hire a VA or an EA to support you so that you can delegate, the parts of the business that you don't need to do. So I've been working with an executive assistant for a few months now. It's brilliant. It's so great to hand off things that aren't my strengths and also aren't growing the business or bringing me life in order to focus. But it is hard at that early stage in terms of investment cost and delegating. But I'm really excited to see how much more I can grow and the business can grow with getting that extra support. So that was recommended to me. The first hire is an assistant.
Absolutely. That was my first hire. My first hire, because I didn't have a mobile phone and because I wanted the phone to be answered, I hired an answering service. And they still exist. They're called Moneypenny, and they used to pick up the phone and as though they were me. And somebody rang up one day and said, and she said, "I'm sorry, Claire's in a meeting." Well, actually, I was watching children's TV. And she said, "I know she's there." Well, I was present in my house. The person who was answering the phone was present somewhere else in the United Kingdom, and I was watching children's TV. But the face of the business was clearly that there was somebody present at all times, but I wasn't there. I didn't have to pick up the phone. That was a great thing. I mean, now with people don't make phone calls anymore, do they? So it doesn't matter. You don't need that. So what an absolute delight to speak to you all today. And this is kind of the beginning, I imagine, of some kind of other conversation, because there's something about tribe, isn't there? We need to find our tribe, and it feels as though there's a connection between you lovely people. I'm going to pop your details in the show notes so that you can grow your tribe. Other people can connect with you. But as we finish, I just want to ask each of you, what's one thing that you're taking from this call for yourself? Laura.
This has been a lovely conversation. I'm so pleased to have been part of it. So thank you so much for the invite, Claire. And I think I'm taking with me a reminder. I think it was something that you said, Katie, about perspective, about like someone else. I think everybody's said it in their own way, actually, about season, about perspective, about just doing what you can do, both as a parent and as a business owner and as a coach, and just in any point. Perspective is my takeaway.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just a reminder of how important it is for women and for mothers to connect with one another and be seen and be heard and just have those spaces to just be honest. It's such a human need, and as women, it's a really, for me, it's a very fundamental kind of need to be connected. I like the word tribe as well.
Great.
I think as I'm leaving, there's a couple of things that are weaving around. So one, as everyone else said, thank you so much for the invite to the conversation, because it's been quite cathartic, actually, to hear several others' experience of what this looks like, and that it isn't always a linear line. And I think the second thing I'm thinking about is intersectionality. So that idea of us being a mum. I've got some other stuff going on in my life. So how does that inform how I show up? What do my kids' needs mean? that I can or can't show up in different ways, and the idea of acceptance and friendship and solidarity and all of that.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for saying yes. Beth, what are you taking away?
I think similar, just that reminder of acceptance, and with the go of running a business and raising kids, and especially if you've got big dreams, it can be really challenging to be like, okay, what's possible? What support do I need? What help do I need? And knowing that, we don't have to be super mums, super heroes. Just figuring out, what's the season I'm in? What's possible? Where can I stretch? But also, where can I get that support? And being really confident in that, because when we lead and coach from that place of peace and confidence and competence and contentment, we really release something in the women that we're working with. I love that.
Thank you. Katie?
Oh, just a reflection for me of the journey that I've been on and been privileged enough to be on and still be on, and also excitement about where it can go. I feel a bit uplifted, actually, would be the word. A bit reassured, a bit uplifted, a sense that there's so much more to come, and all these different facets of who we are actually can rather than seeing them as competing, they can also combine to make something really beautiful. And I think that I heard something the other day that said, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And it's like a little mantra of wherever we think we should be, actually we're always exactly where we're supposed to be. And just hearing everyone's stories has just been really powerful, and just thank you so much for creating this space for us to all share them.
Pleasure. Alice?
I think the fact that listening to everyone confirms for me that coaching can make you a better mum, and being a mum can make you a better coach. And so just being excited that my son's only 2, so listening to you all and seeing how different stages, he can hardly talk. When he starts to talk, there'll be new things I'll be learning. So just that excitement of going forward with that. But I also have a question, and I wonder if there's a future podcast, Claire, of dads reflecting on how being a dad makes them a different coach, having a parent. I really like that movement called Parenting Out Loud, which is for men to be more vocal about how parenting impacts them at work. And I'd just love to hear a similar conversation and see what were the same things and what was different, maybe, of their experience. So that's the question and that I'm taking away.
So, dads who are listening, if you'd like to be on a podcast about dads and coaching, ping us an email, info@3dcoaching.com, and we will set something up to have another great conversation. And do connect with these lovely people if you would like to. Details are in the show notes. I just wanted to end with a postcard that my mum gave me 30 years ago, and it says, I wanted to go and change the world, but I couldn't find a babysitter. And my mum could see something in me that I couldn't see in myself, because actually people now say that I am changing a little bit of the world. But there was a lot of time when I was just doing a little bit or a little bit more and a little bit more. And over time, because our children matter. And there's a time for everything, isn't there? I just want to encourage people with that. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for coming, Mayuri, Alice, Katie, Laura, Beth, and Rachel. And we'll be back next week with another episode. Bye-bye.
If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we'd love you to share the podcast with a friend or leave a comment on social media. And if you'd like to become a regular at the Coaching Inn, you can subscribe on Podbean and all major podcast channels. We look forward to welcoming you next time. You've been listening to The Coaching Inn, 3D Coaching's virtual pub. For more information, check out 3dcoaching.com.